How you started your property
The
investment?
market was pretty okay. Made an offer. I bought it for, I think the offer was.
When you started, do you feel like any myth, any misunderstanding?
Once I came back to Tassie, I sort of started missing the hustle and bustle.
And what exactly got you into short-term rental?
If you put it on a rental, it's not going to give us returns. Stuck with this idea, which is Airbnb.
You are in the position now to just quit your job and do this full time.
I still.
What motivated you to helping our clients procure the right deals?
Started with an idea again. Yeah, Airbnb is not only for holiday makers.
It's not just tourists, families, companies keeps the overall occupancy.
It was just pure emotional decision. Money is not the goal. Making difference in someone's life, and money is the byproduct.
What exactly fundamentals you take into consideration? Finding them the property.
Are there options for any sub-development? Can we put another flat? Can we put a
Right.
granny flat? We are entrepreneur. We can look at leaving our jobs and doing this full time.
Where the market is heading to with the lens of short-term rentals.
I think the Gold Coast is number one. Hobart is the second best market for short-term rental strategy.
Hello everyone, my name is Bhavesh. I am shooting this podcast with our guest Gary. We uncovered about his investment journey. We dig deeper into how he entered the space of short-term rentals, understanding about Airbnb and become an entrepreneur in this journey. We dig deeper into how Tasmania is a gold mine and underestimated investment for short-term rentals. We discussed about pricing, automation. We discussed about his journey of property investment, leveraging platforms like Airbnb. I'm sure you will have good value watching at this podcast. If you have any suggestions, please leave in the comment section. If you like this podcast, like and share. Would really appreciate that. Hello Gary. How are we today?
Good. How are you?
Good, thanks. Good, thanks. So let's straight away jump into this now. Let's start from the beginning. What motivated you getting into the property investment state? Or I should say, let's start from the very beginning of how your overall journey here in Australia started.
Great. Look, it's a very special one. I still remember when I got my permanent residency in 2020, and I was already doing the reverse engineering. I was thinking of getting a house. As you know, being an Indian, coming from subcontinent, it's it's you got a high regard to have your own house. So until 2020, I was renting, and the day I got a PR, I was already in touch with with my bank, CBA, uh, and I went to the bank representative and had a chat to him, and he said you can borrow up to 400, and at the time there was some grant going on, like you could get half the stamp duty or something. I still remember that day. I remember, the day I got my permanent residency, I had a pre-approval. Me and my mate Jazz, we were going to a cricket game.
Mm-hmm.
We popped in for 10 minutes, and I said, "Hey Jazz, before we go to play cricket, let's just have a look at this house and see how's it." We were there for 10 minutes, met the property rep, and I liked the property, and I said, "Yeah, let's just make an offer." The market was pretty okay at the time. I made an offer, and yeah, within a week it got accepted. We had a little bit back and forth, but hand on heart, to be honest, like I didn't do any research at the time. It was just pure emotional decision. Yeah, made an offer, bought it for, I think the offer was 382 something. The guy, the real estate agent come back and said, "Oh, can you bump up for another 5 grand?" I said, "Yeah, that's fine." Yeah, made an offer of 388 and landed the property.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, rest is a history.
Okay, that's how you started your property investment.
Absolutely.
And what exactly got you into short-term rental?
Oh, sure. Yeah, short-term rental is another. It's another different story. That's after how many years? 4 years. I met my wife. We got married,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and so I bought the first property in 2020, and then I met my wife and we bought the second property in 2022. That was again an emotional purchase. We bought the property for 815. The market was super hot. Um, we made few offers. We were not having any luck. And then we bought this property, as husband and wife. And then we got married in that house. So it was an emotional purchase. It wasn't a strategic investment. And then after we decided, we went back to India after we got married. We had a good holidays because I wasn't back home for almost 8, 9 years. Once I came back to Tassie, I sort of started missing the hustle and bustle, like because I come from big city, so is my wife.
Mm-hmm.
And then, we started looking at Melbourne. We got a lot of friends. I love footy, right? I'm into footy, cricket, and I'm a Geelong Cats supporter, big time. So I was like, let's go to big city and explore, what it's got for us. In doing that, and now we got a mortgage of about 700 or 650 something, on our investment or on our PPO, our primary place of residence. So I said to my wife, I said, what we're going to do, like if you put it on a rental, it's not going to give us returns to cover our, our repayments. And then I stuck with this idea, which is Airbnb. And
So you knew about it like beforehand of how things work or how you can be a host or anything that you were supposed to know before jumping into this?
to be honest, no idea, Bhavesh. I would say, I booked Airbnb few times before. We've gone with a friend, and like you booked here and there, but I had no clue, to be honest. And I just jumped in and I said, let me look into it. I looked at the numbers. I said, oh, it'll definitely make more money than the traditional investment, the rental, long-term rental. And and the other flex of short-term strategy is you can have access to your place, right? So this place, it's got a lot of emotions for us.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, if you want to come back and visit and stay a few nights, we can do that. But with long-term rental, you're kind of locked out. Yeah, so I did my research, like we're doing a podcast, I listened to a few podcasts, people who are actually doing it successfully. And and I picked up what I needed to pick up. But yeah, like it was just a shot in the dark, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't fully prepared, and it's just a personality. And thanks to my wife, she helped me, throughout the process, and she was a backbone. She backed me up with everything that we shared, and yeah, I did some research, looked at a few numbers, a few online tools out there in the market, and then and we started the process.
You sound very confident now, but back then when you started, do you feel like any myth or any misunderstanding, or I should say, anything that you would, if you would have known in the past, you would be way more conscious about Airbnb or hosting your property on Airbnb?
Back then, I was a rookie. It's been 2 years now, 2.5 years now. I'm a confident, and me and my wife, we both are super host. We host now 3 properties.
Mm-hmm.
We started with one, and so I had no clue how it all works. But yeah, I've done a lot of research, and what I've done is, Bhavesh, me and my wife, we've both shared the responsibilities.
Mm-hmm.
So my wife looks after the designing part. She
Uh, same. I mean, yeah, sorry, continue.
Pretty obvious, isn't it?
Is it?
So she looks after the designing part. She does the ordering, and she looks after all the consumables and everything. And I look after the strategy part, pricing, handling customers, and all the communication. But yeah, like answering your question, back then, no, I had no clue what I'm getting into. But I'm glad I did get into, and it has changed my life.
Mm.
It has changed a life. Um, Back then, I thought it's only going to be another 5, 6, 10 grand extra to cover my mortgage. But now I can proudly say that being an Airbnb host, it's given us a confidence, and it's given us a new life. And we are entrepreneur, and we can look at leaving our jobs and doing this full time property investing and short term strategy.
So do you say you are in the position now to, like, financially or mentally, to just quit your job and do this full time if you want to?
I think I'm there. Yes, I'm almost there. And I think by the time this podcast comes out, I think I would probably, be a full-time, short-term strategist. Buying investment properties. For the investors. Yes, I'm almost there. As you know, I'm becoming a dad soon. So, uh,
Congrats on that.
thank you. So I'm just going to take a couple of months off. Spend time with family, work on and off. I love working. I love doing what I'm doing. And then by end of this year, who knows? I'll be a full time short term rental specialist, and making difference in people's life.
You mentioned something about being on your own entrepreneurial journey, being an entrepreneur, understanding and hosting your property on Airbnb. I just can't relate more to that. I mean, when I started hosting on Airbnb, I had a completely different perception, but it teaches you about deadlines, communication, stakeholders, reviews,
Spot on.
so many things that you have to take into consideration, and not just consider, but make sure that you are at utmost, how do I say it the right way? You provide and deliver at utmost standard
Mhm.
of everyone involved, whether you're talking about guests, your team, your investors. It it definitely makes, or it definitely sparks the entrepreneurial spirit
Mhm.
inside you.
Mhm.
And I felt the same way. And here we are talking about Airbnb helping investors to explore how this space works and trying to add significant value.
Absolutely.
We often talk about how every investor has their own journey and their own fair share of learnings. If you have to reflect back on your journey, is this something on top of your head that you would like to share with us?
Yeah, look, uh, it's so Airbnb itself, as we all know, Brian Chesky is the founder. He's the one who started it. It started with an idea. It started in, I don't know, it started in Los Angeles or California or somewhere. There was a conference and there were a few techies coming in, and the guy sent a message to his few friends. A lot of techies are coming in, for a conference. Do you want a B&B your place? We'll give them a place to sleep and give them a breaky. Want to make some coins. This was the exact email that Brian Chesky sent, to few of his fellow friends, and rest is the history. I don't know what's the worth of Airbnb right now, but it
North of 80 billion.
wow. So, within how many years? 10 years, 10 plus years, this company is, public listed and, one of the biggest, organization in the world. And it has added so much value in people's life, not only investors, right? For example, if I'm traveling with my family, I don't want to live in a hotel. I want to live in, I want to go to a good place where, we can cook our own meal. We can stay in the same house under one roof. We can play games, and yeah, so it's added a lot of value for tourism as well. So similar to that, I started, in the similar way. Just, the idea just got stuck in my head, and I said, I'm gonna have a crack at it, and I had a red hot crack at it, and I made a difference in my personal life, and we managed to make a difference in guests, how they see a property. And if if you look at our portfolio, of a hosting, the reviews we have, we take a lot of pride in servicing our customer. Customer services is our topmost priority, and we make sure, whosoever is coming to a house, they feel welcomed, and they're spending, a lot of the money on holidays. Make sure they get best out of it. They have a good time, and they take lots of memories back home.
Hmm.
So yeah, absolutely.
Learning, getting back to what you just said, I read it somewhere and it just stuck with me in my head that people don't remember what you tell them or what you show them, but people do remember how you make them feel.
How good is that?
And how true is that? I mean, I feel like hosting on Airbnb, putting some efforts to make sure they have a memorable trip. I mean, it takes everything a long way, whether we are talking about the business, whether we are talking about the inner feeling. I mean, I'm not sure whether how exactly do you feel about that, but feel great about hosting and providing a great experience. And of course,
Yeah.
it's quite evident that
Yeah.
you feel the same way. That's the reason you are a super host.
Yeah, no, you spot on. And I would share a brief story. I remember when we started, hosting guests, at our place. I remember, I was doing customer service, and my whole agenda was getting 5-star reviews, and and I was providing them good service. And I was so polite, even if customers, they complain about anything, I'll be polite, and I'll make sure, I'll try to resolve those problems, and give them a you know give them a great experience. um, but in the job, and thanks to my wife, for a perspective, in the job, I realize that's actually my job is to give, our customers, a great experience. I don't have to fake it. So yeah, and that's where, that's what it reflects in, on a portfolio, being a super host for, I don't know, 2 years running. So we were super host within first 3 months.
Hmm.
And now, when we get the booking, we look into it, we see who is coming, if he got kids coming, we give them, a box of chocolates, which costs us about $10-15. If you got group of young people coming, give them a bottle of wine, a Tassie wine, a sparkling. Who doesn't like Tassie sparkling, or Tassie beers, or that's what the speciality of the place is. And so, by just offering them something, as a welcome, a gift, or a way of saying thank you for booking with us, it goes a long way.
Absolutely. Can't completely agree. Completely agree with what you just said. So, Gary, you started as a client and now you're helping a lot of our investors buy the right property through your own experience. Do you what do you feel about is how was your journey dealing with us?
Oh, amazing.
Before you continue, I would take this as a live opportunity to get a live testimonial out of you.
Oh, and I think me and you, we had multiple discussions regarding this, and
Hmm.
I've given you feedback, and I've shared my review for you, and I cannot be thankful enough. Yeah, but once we got the taste of Airbnb, and the short-term rental income, cash flow, and I saw an opportunity to scale up. I started looking for my next investment, and Airbnb investment or Airbnb strategy. I changed the strategy in my head, and I said, look, I don't want to own a property for like my primary place of residence. We're going to rent it. We're going to rent west, and me and my wife, we're going to keep on investing, in short-term rental, or buy an investment property. And as I was looking for my next investment property, thanks to this algorithm and AI or whatever, you popped up on my socials with your marketing campaign, and yeah, I sent you DM, and we touched base pretty quickly. We had a meeting, and I shared my brief, and you said, you do Airbnb hosting for 3+ years. You're successfully managing your portfolio in South Bank, Melbourne Square, uh, Docklands. You had a penthouse.
That's right.
So I looked at, and I looked at your reviews, and I said, look, the guy is doing something right. He's local, and I'm looking for something in inner Melbourne, northern suburbs, because what the agenda that I had in my mind, that I wanted to buy something locally, so that like, I'm not doing any cleaning, or I'm not doing any maintenance for Tassie because it's interstate. I want to do something, for year and a half, so that I'm hands on. I know what are the challenges, our cleaners face, what are the challenges other people, our guests, our tradies, etc., etc. So that was the whole agenda behind it. And um, my mortgage, I could borrow another 600. So I contacted you. I said, this is my brief. You said, yeah, this is achievable. We can start looking for it. I remember within few weeks, you presented us few properties. We knocked off. You came back, and yeah, and then this gold, this how do I say, this cash making cow that we bought in Preston, Victoria.
Let's talk numbers.
Absolutely. And I love numbers. So, the property was advertised for 560. The property had some issues. The developer got burst. It was sitting with the lawyers. You worked that out with the real estate agent. You got the insights, and we did the bank valuation.
Before you say, just to put a emphasis on that, that's the beauty of hosting on Airbnb. The real estate agent, I knew him because he stayed in one of my Airbnb properties.
Wow.
So we had that host and guest relationship established already.
Yeah.
So yeah, it helped us get some significant value for you.
Yeah. So you had an existing relationship with him. Yeah, I remember it was advertised for 560. I said, let's start the negotiation at 540, and you went hard. And this is where I want to say thank you, and I want to say you've done a great job, because I'm not a big negotiator, right? I like to keep things straight. If I like something, I go a pretty middle class, average mindset. But that's where you need professionals, right? So I paid the advocacy, whatever the fee we negotiated, and whatever the industry standards are. But looking in hindsight, I think it added a significant value in our portfolio, not in our portfolio, but in our life. The way I started looking at things. Yeah, so we made an offer 540. We had a back and forth. The agent wanted close to 560, and then we closed the deal at 545. Yeah, and we went hard, me and my wife. We bought everything, we set it up. As I said, my wife she's genius. She designed, she bought the furniture. We furnished it, 2-bedroom townhouse, and we went live pretty much within like 4 days of the settlement.
Second week of last October.
That's right.
Right.
In 2024. Yeah, 4 days. And with the help of AI and everything, we listed our property up front, using ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever. thanks to AI. I cannot be thankful enough to AI. Yeah, put the property live on Airbnb before even settlement, and we started getting booking. I remember sending you a screenshot of the first booking. I think it was about $4,500 or something.
I do remember, I have such a great memory with it. I actually went to India just after our settlement. I got married last year in November.
No, congratulations.
So I went a month back, and I so specifically remember I was busy in the wedding shopping, and you sent me the screenshot. And because of the wedding shopping, I was so overwhelmed in my head, but the screenshot that you shared made me happy. So I had good memories with it. You were not the only one happy with the first booking.
Yeah. Oh, you won't believe how my wife was. I don't. My face expressions stays the same, even if I'm super happy from inside. But my wife and I think we were traveling somewhere, in a car, and we got the booking, and it was $4,500 upfront, and this was the first big booking that we have ever seen in Airbnb journey.
Hmm.
Because in Tassie, the strategy is different. So in Tassie, you get holiday makers,
Right.
right? So this one here in Victoria, we've got so this young family of four, mom and dad and young kids, they had some plumbing issues, in their property, and
Right.
they were doing some renovation. So and they rented our property, and this is the beauty of it. Like, not a lot of people knows that Airbnb is not only for holiday makers.
Hmm.
Right. And this is what me and know from our profession, running a successful Airbnb, that, we get bookings from insurance companies, we get bookings from professionals, nurses staying with us for like weeks and weeks, NDIS. You get, we had the recent, I think you did some content as well on that. We got booking from North
Mm,
East Link
I
project.
I remember.
Yeah,
I remember. I actually shared your listings inquiry on my social media, saying you received an inquiry from the team of Northeast Link roadway upgrade,
that's right.
right?
Yeah.
And yeah, definitely. So I, I get that. So it's not just tourists; it's people who are families between the homes, companies looking for accommodation for their teams, and everything in between. So that keeps the overall occupancy and the demand constant.
Yep, yep. Just finishing off the numbers. So, we started I think on 14th of October, and it never stopped. Yeah, right. Because we get long bookings. My cleaning fee is like 5%
Mm-hmm.
of the revenue, and yeah, and that was the first big booking, and then it's just keep on coming, and as I said at the start, it just changed our life. So I've just completed a tax return for the financial year, end of financial year 24-25, and so strategically, we bought this property under a trust structure so that we can, manage our borrowing capacity. We didn't buy under a personal name because we knew this is going to be positively geared property, and that's the beauty of it, right? So cash flow is one, capital growth is another, and then if you combine the strategy, you're taking it to the moon.
Absolutely. I used to remember my former employer used to tell me, and that's the reason he was my former employer and he's doing really good. I, one of my colleagues said something about you. I just don't remember exactly where the conversation began, but he said, cash is the king. And my former employer just got into the conversation out of nowhere and said, no, cash flow is the king.
Right.
And how cool is that?
No, it's good. So no, look, cash flow is the oil, as they say, and the growth is, it's the god. So you need both to run hand in hand. So yeah, so we've just done the tax return for this financial year, and we've successfully made 54,000 plus as a gross revenue in how many months? 8 months, 9 months, and our cleaning cost was pretty much close to 5 to 6%, which is nothing. Industry standard is about 15% in holiday making spaces, and I had a loan of about 480. And then and in the very first year, even if you had a upfront expense of 15 grand or 10 to 15 grand furnishing a property, it's a positive getting property. And now this makes us in a position to buy another property in in 6 months, 8 months time, because the property is positively geared. I've got the tax documents. Accountant can give us a letter, whatever the documentation that we need to borrow more.
So, looking at the purchase price, just being specific to the numbers, in this financial year, you began hosting in October, and now we're talking at June end, 24-25. You mentioned you made north of $50,000 gross.
Yeah,
So we are looking at the original purchase price of 545, north of 10% rental yield.
absolutely. And we manage ourselves, so that saves the management cost as well.
Hmm. Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
And in terms of what I recall, you refinanced it recently. You want to share about that?
Oh, absolutely. Why not? That's it's that's another beauty of this this property. Fast forward, 8 months. I've just finished my refinancing of this property. So when we bought this property, we took the equity out of our existing two properties, and we used that to buy a third property. And we use some of our cash to do a deposit of 20% for this purchase. And fast forward 8 months, we just done a refinance. We bought the property for 545. It's valued at 610. I got a usable equity 50 to 60,000, 53,000, I think, the cash that I got in my bank. Got it refinanced, got the money out, and now the beauty of this short-term rental strategy is now I don't have to put single dime in it, because this property is positively geared. The cleaners are looking after the property. I have to keep an eye on guest communication or pricing, some SEO of making sure the listing is optimized and everything, and the property is autopilot. And I can, the way Victoria is heating up, or the inner suburbs of Melbourne, it's due for appraisal. I'm pretty sure by end of this year the property is gonna be valued at close to $700,000.
So we can say we did a great job.
Oh, absolutely, and thanks to you, Ash, and your team. It couldn't have been possible, without you guys. You've given us that perspective. You've given us that professional services, and that's where the buyers agents are making a difference in people's life. For a professional like me who's working full time, I don't have time to talk to a real estate agent, and do the professional negotiations. That's where we need you, because this is your full-time job. I know a lot of dodgy BAs out there, but like if you have to look at the good side of BAs, and I cannot recommend enough you, or a good buyer's agent to a busy professional.
Amen.
Absolutely.
I think I should have charged you double for that. Just kidding.
For the next one, maybe.
For the next one. So you started as a client, and now you're helping our current investors share your expertise, your contacts in Tassie. What motivated you to involve yourself at such level in helping our clients procure the right deals?
Very good question, Bhavesh. Very good question. And the reason I say that this is a good question, because I come from a middle class family, right? I'm just going to take it a little up one step back. So when I landed in Tassie, I don't exactly remember, I had $500 or I had $1,500 from family, right? That was the money that I had in my bank account. And the reason, my parents, my mom and dad, they gave me, this money because, I had my cousins and my brother in Tassie already. So and I was looking, when you proposed this podcast thing, you said let's have a discussion. I was thinking, getting that thing out and look at it. What was the exact amount? Because I was confused whether it's 500 or 1,500. So that's what I got when I landed on this, like in Tassie, in beautiful place, and I've got a lot of respect, a lot of I admire the place that has given us so much. So now with me working full time, as 9 to 5, so is my wife. We can only borrow, as much as much we can borrow. So that's where when I had a conversation with you, you helped us getting this investment, and I was like, this is another way of monetizing, or just using my expertise, and this is another way of revenue making. Not only revenue making a difference to someone else's life.
Right.
And it started with an idea again. I saw people started, all of our close friends, they started asking us, what are you guys doing? I've seen your Instagram page for your Airbnbs, and you guys are doing good. How does this work? And it started with the free advice.
Friends and family advice.
Friends and family, yeah. And the people, people started reaching out to me and to my wife and said, how do you do this? How does this all work? Some of the people have come back and said, what is Airbnb? I said, this is like a short-term rental marketplace, where you can book a place if you're going to Tassie and all that. And we had few friends, who went to Tassie and, stayed at our place, and they loved it. And, you know, uh, and that's how it started. And I started giving this advice to my friends and colleagues and, everything. And now, and now if you can help your clients, or giving them a strategy session, and making a strategy for them, and buying the right asset at the right price, and advertising it on short-term rental, we can make a difference, and at the same time we get rewarded for that.
Gives you such a kick, right? I feel the same way. I mean, the way I started looking at properties, I mean, like, there is only so much I can borrow and only a few properties that I can buy. But what about the opportunity right in front of me? What do I do about that? So I started telling my friends, my family, that this is a great deal. Let's put an offer. I am positive you're going to make significant equity upfront. And I was just like you said, suggesting your friends and family. That's exactly what happened with me as well. That I started posting on Instagram with an intention to get more bookings
Mhm.
for my Airbnb. But on the contrary, that's happened. But on the contrary, a lot of investors started reaching out to me in my DMs saying, "I've got this property. What do you reckon it would make on Airbnb? I have got this property on short-term rental. Like, I've got this property. What do you reckon it would make on short-term rental?" And I used to run numbers,
Mhm.
look at the software and everything. And I thought in my head, let's just reverse engineer it. And instead of you coming to me and asking me what my property can make on Airbnb, let's buy the right property at the right price from the very beginning.
Absolutely.
How cool that would be. And that's how I started, sharing my experience with my friends and family, held a few of my Airbnb guests buy the property, got me more confidence, and now we do this full time.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
Yeah. And you're doing what you love, basically. And again, and me and you, Bhavish, we've discussed this multiple times, right? For me, and I think I can pretty much vouch for you as well. Money is not the goal. So for me, is making difference in someone's life, and money is the byproduct.
So true.
And same is with the short term rental strategy, right? When I look at my Excel sheet, I look at the numbers. I don't know how much money I've got in my bank account, right? But when I look at that spreadsheet, year on year increase, like for like increase, the expenses, the income, the taxation, I get kick out of it. Like, I have accomplished something in these 2-3 years, and then money is a byproduct, it follows. You're not doing a charity. So yeah, so if you do a good work, if you're making a difference in someone's life, you'll get what you need.
Absolutely. Let's dig in deeper into what exactly the fundamentals you take into consideration of drafting anyone's strategy, of finding them the property or the deal, or let's talk about site selection or pricing, anything. One thing, I actually received a DM in my Instagram following that up. A prospect asked me, like, do the views matter for Airbnb, or buying a property with the view, will that make him more money? And I would like to ask you the same question.
Hmm.
What do you reckon?
No, good. Yeah, you're taking me into deep into the subject, which is good. I love talking about it, and
Mm-hmm.
I can go on for hours and hours. So I worked in the procurement industry. I'm a procurement professional, so I've been working in procurement profession for 5+ years. I've worked with the Tasmanian government. I worked in the here locally for Victorian government. So what I do is, for site selection, what I do is I do it like a tender evaluation. So what happened in procurement? So when you are evaluating a tender responses, you have a criteria.
Right.
So, for example, the client or the prospect that sent you a DM saying, "Hey, does the views matter?" Of course, it matters, but not, if you have to rate it out of 10, not 10 on 10, right? So how we suggest or how we do the site selection, it should, you have a evaluation criteria. So you got, good property views, spacious, 3 bedroom, you can put amenities in it. It's close to, Woolies or Coles so that people can cook at home. It's close to the nearby attractions. So there are a lot of, checks and balances. You cannot tick all the boxes.
Right.
If you tick all the boxes, you smash the goal. It's a gold. You would be ready to pay $1 million or whatever the amount is. So what we do is, we do, it should be minimum, the 70% of the boxes should be ticked
Right.
before we actually present a client saying, this is the investor report for this property, and this is how it'll work on Airbnb. And remember, as we always say, cash flow is only to sustain you and to keep you have that investment property so that you don't have to pay anything out of your pocket. Capital growth is still the king, as you rightly said at the start. So, we factor in those factors as well when we're looking for a site selection. Are there options for any subdevelopment? Can we put another flat? Can we put a
Right.
granny flat? Can we put another 3 bedroom house? Right? So that if you can cover the holding cost for the front of the house, let's say, for example, a recent purchase that you made in Sorel, right? 39 Walker Street. You bought it for 526. The ADNA says it's going to make $52,000 as a gross revenue.
Gross, yeah.
Let's say it's managed by management company. You take the 15% inclusive, 15% plus GST out. You add another 5K for for sundries, and the investor, left with about $32,000 to $35,000 as a rental yield, which is about 6 to 8%. Pretty good, isn't it?
It is. It is. That's what the whole value proposition is. But yeah, continue.
So so they can sustain their portfolio. They can, they don't have to put single cent from their savings for the for the mortgage, and then in the meantime, they can subdevelop the back of the house, which is, it's a 770 square meter block. You start the planning. You do your planning application. That costs you, I don't know, about $25,000. You fund that, and then you get ready to build another house. And it's a flat land, right? It's flat land. You put another dwelling. Let's say the build cost is about 300 per square meter, and you put another 110 square meter house. It costs you about 350 all up,
Right.
including the DA application and planning application, council, your architects, your building surveyors, and you get the occupancy certificate. And then the way Tassie is going at the moment, the vacancy rate in Tassie is 0.65%, which is the second lowest in the country.
Right.
It's, I think we are having a rental crisis in Tasmania at this stage. And then, and you talk about the migration. Tassie get allotment of about 2,500 every year in each financial year. They can have up to 2,500 people who will get their permanent residency through Tasmania. So when you factor in that, once the house is built, you can sell that house. Like now you have built, 3 or 4 different strategy for exit.
I mean, talking about that, you mentioned about you developing subdivision, adding a granny flat. I had my fair share of learning experience in last 6 months dealing with the council. What would you say? How difficult or how easy it it is actually to get the plannings and approvals in place, dealing with the surveyors, getting building contracts? How has your journey been dealing with? And as an investor, what do you reckon? Like on a scale of 1 to 10,
Mm-hmm.
how manageable is that is?
I mean, I always say one thing in my life. People talk about stress and people, talk about difficulties. And I always say, stress or, helplessness or, any difficulty could be, for example, lifting a glass of water could be, stressful for me, but not for you,
Hmm.
right? It's all perception, how you take it.
Right.
So this is exactly the example of the ideology or the methodology that I took, and I can share an example later about the granny flat that we're doing at the back of the house. Yeah, yes, it's not easy dealing with the councils. Yeah, if it's that easy, everyone would do it,
Hmm.
right? And that's why you need professionals,
Right.
right? You put money into the investment, you make money out of the investments. You don't have to do everything yourself. That's why you're running this organization, this company. You've make me, in contact with your contacts in Tassie, your architects, your renovators, and let's say. I'm stealing your line. You always say, if we make $10, you know, you make $2. It's my investment. I make $6, and $4 get distributed between whosoever helps us get those $10.
Right.
If you follow that methodology, if you follow that principles, it's not hard. So coming back to your question, dealing with councils, it's not easy. But yes, if you have the right people, if you have the right team, if you have the right professionals, and that's exactly what we are doing, because we have done this for ourselves, for our portfolios, again and again and again. Now, this is where we monetizing. This is where we making difference to people's lives. We are experienced investors. We've delivered returns for our portfolios, and we know how it works. What are the rules and regulations, and which council is easy to deal with, which is a growing suburb. So we do all the due diligence that we need to do, and then we take it forward.
Looking back, I mean, where you started hosting on Airbnb, hired me as your buyer's agent. We found your property, and then we're dealing with renovating your one of the previous first purchase that you made. Looking at the journey of last 3 years now, is there anything that you would like to change, or something that you would like to, if you given an opportunity to go back in the past and change something?
You know what, Ash? This is a really good question, and I think a lot of people are gonna relate to this because the example that I'm gonna share, it's quite straightforward. So definitely, I'll change a lot of things if I go back in the time. For example, when we started Airbnb, so we listed our property. We went live on Airbnb in 2023 or two, something like that, in December.
Oh, I know the story. Yeah, but
Yes.
yeah, I would like to know one more time. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think I've shared it
Yeah, yeah,
multiple
yeah.
times. So, we started, we went live in December because we were meant to get on the board to get to Melbourne, on the very 1st of January. So we went on live, and I was playing cricket.
Hmm.
I love sports. I was playing cricket for North Hobart Cricket Club, uh, and that was, I think that was my second last game or last game before we stop, take a break for Christmas and everything. So I remember, I got out of the field. We lost the game, and I was with my brother in a car, and he was driving. And I turned on my phone, and I saw a notification. You've got a booking. That was the first one, and the first one with just going on live within few days, and the booking was something about $1,700 for 5 days or 7 days, something like that. I think I should frame it because that's changed everything for us. We lost a game, and I wasn't. Yes, I was sad. We lost a game. It was a 2-day game. We went hard and we fought hard, and and then I rang my wife, and she, she had the, no, she didn't have the access at the time. I said, we got a booking. She said, what? I said, we got a booking for 5 days and 6 days, and I said $1,700, and you won't believe how happy we were.
Hmm.
I just lost it. I just lost a game. I said, okay, we'll talk it about later. And And now this is where, so this was the happiest moment of, at the time when we bought this, when we had this first booking. But yes, going back in the time, things that I would like to change, I would like to use a professional. Now you asked me how.
Definitely. That's yeah.
Yeah.
Why?
Reason I say this, so we went live and we advertised the night in the hottest period of the season, in Christmas, New Year, where everyone is happy and, Larry, and they're going on holidays. They don't care how much they spend. People are happy. It's holidays. It's summer. It's beautiful in Tassie. And we rented that. We sold that night for about 350 a night. And now, so I just had a booking. We just had a booking for on the same property for this Christmas, New Year time. Guess how much is the booking?
Looking at the getting my own experience on table, somewhere between $1,000 around that mark,
Exactly right.
right?
You know it because you're a professional. You know it.
Hmm.
So you got a booking for 5 days, $5,200.
Hmm.
So that's where I realized, I lost the opportunity. This is an opportunity loss. Yes, I learned a lot, but if I could have shared a piece of a pie, if I could have, engaged a professional, he could have let us hit the ground running at the time, right? I could have used pricing system, like for example, we use Price Labs, right?
I
That,
know. Yeah.
we use Price Labs, and that keeps control of the pricing. It makes sure your pricing is the best all around the year. If the bookings are, if the occupancy is good, it bumps up the price. It's AI, right? And this is the organization from India. Price Lab is, I think you're the one who actually told me.
Yes, it's a Pune-based company, but it got acquired by a US company now.
Of course.
But yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, so you use Price Lab or any dynamic pricing. It takes control of the pricing. So that's the one thing. If anyone wants to start an Airbnb and they don't know where to start, hire a professional. Right. If you're gonna make $10,000, you can share the piece of the pie with the, obviously, you do your due diligence. You make sure you hire the right person. You look at the reviews, word of mouth. That's where you spend your time doing your due diligence if you don't have the time to do it yourself. So, back in the time, and I thought at the time, I know everything. I've done my research. I know how it works. But no, and I was surprised the next year when I started using pricing, the dynamic pricing. That's the lost revenue. 1,700. If you take out 1,700 from 5,200, I think it's about $3,500, and that's where you need a professional. And now, so this is for Airbnb. And now this is, if you need to, buy investment property, specializing in short-term rental, I think where buyer's agent or where, your Jasper Advocacy can make a difference, you can keep the emotions aside.
that's true. That's so true. Keeping the emotions aside, looking at the data and making a data-backed decision, and that's what the whole value proposition is about. Keeping, factoring the different factors that you take into consideration, and then analyzing a suburb, and then the pocket of a suburb, then a property in a good pocket of that suburb, and then reverse engineering whether it makes sense for us to buy. And yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah. So I think that's where the professional help comes in the picture. You can keep the emotions side. If let's take an example of a mom and dad investor, who are buying their first investment property. They've got their primary place of residence. They want to buy an investment, but if they go out in the market, they're going to look at it. Oh, the rooms are not looking. The rooms are small. There's not enough room in the kitchen. The living room is small.
The
XYZ.
floor plan is not exactly what they would have preferred living in. But I completely understand. Like, I completely get that. It's not, they're not buying the property to live in, they're buying an investment property.
Yeah, yeah.
So their concern should be getting the best return on investment, right? And I try and educate all my clients the same way, saying you're putting an X amount into a property purchase. You're not supposed to live in that.
Mhm.
So don't just look at the floor plan. Just think of it this way: that you're buying an asset, and just in the hindsight, in Tasmania, looking at the kind of properties there are, a lot of properties are 3 bedroom, 1 bathroom,
Yeah.
right?
Very old
That's
school.
very much like looking at, if you just put in that filter of 2 bathrooms, uh, it's a big filter to put in, and the outcome, the inventory gets so reduced that it doesn't like it makes it very difficult for you to procure and find a property that way. So saying that, explaining this to an investor,
Mhm.
that you're buying an investment property, you want to make sure the best case scenario for you
Mhm.
is capital appreciation
Yeah. Big.
and cash flow along the journey,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And if there is a lot of requirement from an Airbnb tourist site point of view for such property, then that's it.
Yep.
But an investor need to understand, considering that they would want to buy a 3 bedroom, 2 bathroom property, but putting themselves in the shoe. I
Mhm.
mean, like putting myself in their
And the
shoe.
shoes. Yeah.
I understand that, but coming back to where we just started, it's data.
Yep.
It's keeping all the emotions aside,
Yep.
looking at the data where the demand is.
Yep.
Now that we know what the kind of demand is, now let's find a property, let's find an opportunity which can fulfill that,
Mhm.
and just enjoy the best return on investment that you're making.
Yep, yep. No, you spot on, and I think that's where we take our clients back to, the example that I shared from my work experience. The tender evaluation. The site selection. Yes. I'm not saying a different flooring, floor plan or small rooms. Yes, yes, it plays a part in Airbnb site selection. But what is the criteria? What is the percentage you are allocating to that floor plan?
Right.
You need to, for example, maybe, in our site selection, it could be 5%, right? And then the strategy is, capital growth, right? So, for example, another purchase that Jasper Advocacy made, which is 14 Henry Street, it got 3 rooms. Right, the rooms are small, but is it good on Airbnb? It won't be. It won't be a great, you know, um, uh, like it won't be as similar to the property that we have in Surreal, which is $815,000. It's got good views and everything. It's got a garage at the back, new build. So this 14 Henry Street, it'll make enough for an investor to cover the mortgage, cover the council rates, cover the insurances, cover the cleaning cost, management cost, and everything. And then it'll leave the way interest rates are going. We just had one another interest rate cut today, which is good. So
Hmm.
you're looking at 5.5, close, 5.75% as an interest rate. So it'll cover the mortgage and it'll leave you a surplus. And the beauty of it, the entry point that we bought the property for is $582,000. It was sold for $600,000 in 2023 December.
Hmm.
And with your negotiation skills, with your team's, their skill and knowledge, you've managed to make a difference of $22,000 upfront as an equity.
So true. Talking about the same particular deal, we presented this to a different prospect, a different client that we are working with. But now that I reflect over it, what I was just thinking, such a good deal, why this particular client didn't go through. After a true reflection, talking to my wife about it, and reflecting over my real estate journey, one thing I realized and come to a conclusion that when it comes to investment, there is nothing right or wrong.
Absolutely.
It's very subjective.
True.
What could be right for you could be completely wrong for me, and vice versa.
True.
So, yeah, talking about the same sort of property, now I look back, I realized, yes, it wasn't right for X person,
Hmm.
but it was perfect for Y person.
True.
So, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much an interesting reflection to have on.
Yeah.
There's no right way or the
Hmm.
wrong way.
Yeah.
It's very subjective.
Yeah, yeah. So technically, you're the strategist, right? People come to you with the brief, and then you make a strategy for them, and you figure out, So, for example, you may have like 10 different cards, right? But you will pull up the card that you think is the right fit for them. Is that how it works? Or
Yeah, definitely. It's exactly how it works. Talking about this, we purchased an apartment for a client in South Bank, and it's their first ever investment property. I won't have suggested them. I mean, like being in myself, I mean, like, being in their shoe, my intention would be buying a property for capital appreciation,
sure,
making sure that property grows in value, and use the developed equity to buy another property. Right?
absolutely,
That's how I think. That's what a lot of investors think, right?
yeah,
But the story with this client that we just procured a deal for was a completely different. I mean, he lives in Geelong. He likes to come visit city, visit Crown, and have a good time over the weekend. Stay here and then go back. His motivation was to get a city escape apartment just so that he could come, block the dates, have the same place, be secured about it, and have an emotional flex between his friends and family that he owns a city apartment.
beautiful.
I mean, then when you bring in the rationale of return on investment, capital appreciation, data, it doesn't matter. I mean, how would you beat that? So, saying, yeah, coming back to what we just discussed, there's nothing right or wrong.
Yeah, it's very
It's very
subjective.
subjective.
Yeah,
And to answer what you mentioned, my job is basically to understand what your goals is, what exactly are you trying to achieve,
yeah,
and give my 2 cents on it, like what would I would have done, and then understand your brief, narrow down, making sure whether it's achievable or no. If it's achievable, we get in business. If not, we try and bend, come to a mutual agreement, I should say.
yeah. No, I totally agree, and it's a great example of this client of yours. You purchased this apartment. I wouldn't put my money in apartments, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people would agree with us. They won't buy an apartment. But yeah, like if you got a highly negatively gearing portfolio, you want something for your flexibility to come into town, and I remember you've managed to get that deal under the asking price because you have lived there, you've done
Yes, yes.
Airbnb hosting for 3 years in the area. What was the story?
So the same story. The agent, I had a very good relationship with him. He used to be my Airbnb guest. I helped him buy a property in the city, and yeah, this property was with him, and we understood the client's motivation. They wanted a longer settlement. They were not very fussy about the price.
Yeah.
So we understood the vendor's motivation and placed an offer accordingly, and we managed to get a good deal and create a good win-win situation.
Perfect. Nice.
Yeah, that's what I've been. And talking to the investors now, Gary, what are you seeing lately in terms of market trends, in terms of where the market is heading to with the lens of short-term rentals?
Yeah. Look, I'm quite bullish on Tasmania.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's if you look at the short term rental market, I think the Gold Coast is number one. Is that right?
That's right.
Yep, Gold Coast is number one, and I think if you do your maths and the permutation and combinations, Hobart is the second best market for short term rental strategy. And reason I say this with this such confidence because if you're gonna buy anything in Gold Coast, you're looking at close to 1 million,
Right.
right? That pretty much closes out a lot of investors. If you're buying your second investment, if you're buying your third investment, right? You can only borrow so much with these in this climate with this interest rates close to 6%. It's hard. It has hit the borrowing capacity big time. So the second best is Hobart, but again strategically, right? It's an island, and if you can buy the property at the right price point. So for right now, I think 600 to 650 or $700,000 in Hobart is the sweet spot. You can negotiate hard. It's a buyer's market right now, and it's just the very start of the market's getting rolled up and getting hot, like it was in 21, 22 after the COVID. And then if you can service it through short-term rental strategy, making a positive cash flow, that can help you scale up your portfolio. You can build a significant capital growth by buying a bigger lot, build a sub-development, service it through, Airbnb strategy. And as I said, it has made me and my wife are entrepreneurs,
Mm-hmm.
right? Airbnb has changed our life. We are not looking at investments the way I used to look at it, right? For example, if I buy my investment in WA and I give it for long term rental, I'm not going to look at it. I'm not going to have chance to look at it for I don't know how long, because it's tenanted all the time. But now with these properties, we can go back and have a look at. We can go and book in. For example, I'm going to Hobart in November for India is coming down there to play their T20 against Australia. So we booked the tickets. We booked a house, and and all of our friends are coming together, and we're gonna have a big party at our place.
That's good. Talking about Hobart, let's talk more about Hobart. You mentioned Indian cricket team is coming to Hobart for the match. What happens, like, just from a Airbnb lens? What happens to the demand for properties? Do you see any big surge in pricing for Airbnbs or short-term rental accommodation, in particularly in Hobart because it's an island?
Hmm.
And what do you reckon?
Again, it's it's the economics, supply versus demand, right? In property investing, it's the big thing. If the demand goes up, and the supply can't keep up, it raises the prices. That's exactly the case. If you have an event in Hobart, for example, if you've got a footy game, if you've got a cricket game, you got Dark Mofo, you got the Sydney to Hobart yacht race over the Christmas period, it shoots the demand up because there are only limited places in Tassie. If you look at the population of Tasmania, it's under 500,000 people.
Hmm.
Can you like it's just like it's a big place. You can go from one end to another within 4 hours, I think, from south to north, north to south. Um, yeah, so if any of the event like this happens in Tassie, it gives a huge push to the demand, and that's where we use dynamic pricing, price lab, beyond pricing, any other market competitor pricing softwares that just automatically moves your pricing to 1100s, 1200s, whatever the market price should be. And so we generally, for example, for our baby coat surreal property, we advertise a night for 350 a night. And then if you have more than 5 people, you charge extra. That's again all automated through AI. But if you take that, if you have the same night in December, January, or on school holidays, then you're looking at about on an average 700, 800 a night.
So what I understand is, to get the best return on investment, it's more like optimizing the calendar throughout and maximizing the hot dates of the year
Yeah.
or hot months of the year.
Yep, yep, yep. So you sustain in the off market. Again, you'll make enough to cover your expenses, and then when the season starts, then you jack up your prices, and people are ready to pay. Because it's such a beautiful time of the year in Tasmania in summer. The nights are longer. The days are longer. You can go out and spend your time outdoors. Looking at the scenery. Your Cradle Mountains, your Mount Wellington, Bruny Island. It's still undiscovered place on the planet.
Can't agree more to that, Gary. I visited Tasmania in 2019 with my girlfriend, like now wife.
Absolutely.
So we went there as a tourist. So I loved being there. But now, recently visiting there a couple of times through the lens of buyer's agent, looking at the industries, looking at the properties, it changed the whole perspective in my head. I mean, it's a big city. What I, comparing it to what I thought it was in 2019, it's nothing like that.
Yeah.
It's a big city with
Is
so much happening out there.
right, right. You know what the joke is? Like on the mainland, people, when you say you're from Hobart, they say, "Do you guys use Australian dollars? What is the
No, you're
currency?"
kidding me.
It is. I mean, it's still undiscovered place, on the planet. It's one of the best places. The cleanest air. The genuinity of people is still there. People are lovely. You walk down the street. People will laugh. Uh, you know, have a smile, or you say good day or something. How you going? It was so surprising for me, to be honest, coming from Delhi, from India, to Tassie. I remember when I got my visa, in 2016. I was working for a company called MetLife Insurance, which is one of the biggest insurance company in United States. I was working for that company, and my colleague said, "Okay, so you've resigned. Where you off to?" I said, "I'm going to Hobart, Tasmania." He had no clue. He had because we Indians, we love cricket, right? So I remember Virat Kohli played an inning of 180 something against Sri Lanka in 2013 in Hobart,
Right.
right? That's what made Virat Kohli at the time. That's just changed his life
Hmm.
after that innings. So in a way, like, I have so much respect for Tasmania, and I'm pretty sure, if we ever get chance to speak to Virat, he would, I think two innings, one in Asia Cup against Pakistan, something about 180 something, and the other one was in that triangular series against Sri Lanka, because India needed to chase those runs within. There was some calculation, in some overs, and he smashed Malinga. He was at the peak of his game at the time. So yeah, I said to my friend, I said, I'm going to Tasmania. No, I didn't even know what Tassie was back then. Tasmania. He looked at the map and he said, "Oh, are you going to Sri Lanka?" I said, "What?" He said, Tassie is like Sri Lanka to India.
Hmm.
Oh my God, Then I landed in Tassie. My brother, not my brother, my cousin came and picked me up, and it was like a shoebox.
Hmm.
It was like a shoebox, right? Going from such a big city, Delhi, it's a metropolitan city, there's so many people, and, I'm landing in a shoebox, and here I come. Yeah, Tasmania.
Tasmania. I mean, I can talk about it for hours. I mean, I've just recently got off the Tasmania, good memory
Hmm.
in my head. Uh, Talking about Hobart specifically, we discussed a few things about the demand and supply, how good it is in terms of occupancy. You mentioned that the best place to do Airbnb is Gold Coast, and the second best place to do Airbnb is Hobart,
Yeah.
right? I mean, looking at the data, looking at the report we just prepared, talking about the airport upgrade, what do you think about that? I mean, now there is only one international flight that
Yep.
is from Auckland to Hobart,
Hmm.
and because of the airport upgrade and the tourism plan by the Tasmanian government, they're expecting international flights from Singapore and China coming to Hobart by this year end.
Yep.
It's anyway the good place to do Airbnb.
Hmm.
How good or how better it's going to be? What do you reckon?
Oh, I'm so bullish about it. I'm very positive about it, and I've sent an email to Hobart Airport. I don't know how many times, right? So, it's, I think last year government invested 135 million on the airport runway upgrades. So there's two upgrades happening at the moment. One is the runway upgrades, and the other one is the terminal expansion. So this, I don't know the exact figure. How much is the investment in the terminal expansion? It's close to 200, 200 million, but on the runway, which is just completed, I think last week as we speak, government invested 135 million on the runway expansion, and the reason they've invested that money so that they can have a bigger aircraft landed, you know, at the Hobart Airport for the likes of Cathay Pacific, or direct flights from Hong Kong, etc., etc. And the last conversation that I had with Hobart Airport, I had a communication from them. They said they are in conversation with Cathay Pacifics and other airlines, Singapore Airlines, because they book their routes pretty much like a year in advance. So they're almost to the tail end of the negotiation. So we are anticipating, we're going to have direct flights, by end of this year or start of next year. Anyway, we are super busy. If you look at the like for like numbers, year on year numbers, the PAX numbers for the Hobart Airport or the visitors for Tassie tourism, they're just going up and up every year. So what it's going to do, why I'm so bullish about it. So what we call the winter season in Tasmania, off season, we so the government is running another campaign which is Discover Tasmania off peak season. So that's where they tie up with the likes of Jetstar, Qantas or Virgin. They fund their their tickets, etc., and then they advertise their ticket in cheap price so that they can bring more tourists during the off season.
Right.
So what's going to happen is, if you have these direct flights from Singapore and Hong Kong, then we're going to have those Singaporean customers or Hong Kong or China directly coming to Tasmania when it's hot. So right now it winters in Australia, back home in India and in China, in Japan, in Singapore, it's hot, humid.
Right.
That's where they want to escape their country and come to the
Southern Hemisphere.
Absolutely. So that's where the demand's going to go up, and they are wealthy countries, right? So we get a lot of Singapore customers or people from China in the winters. Lovely customers, they spend really well in the local economy, easygoing, travels with big families. They have similar cultures, in the subcontinent, and right now, if they have to come to Hobart, they'll have to come to first Melbourne or Sydney and then to Tassie. So you can only come to Tassie if you know actually what the place is like, right? You have to do your research. But think of this way: if we have direct flights, by this time next year, start of the winters, let's say by Easter, and they advertise it heavily, and people start coming to Tassie directly. It's going to be for tourism purposes, it's going to be profitable all year. The demand's going to go up. So it's not going to stay it's still going to be the off season, but it's not going to be the off season like it was in 24, 23, 22.
So we are anticipating even better returns.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is, again, for our investors, this is only a cash flow. Right, you can, if you're an investor, this is the cash flow, and you can make a life out of it. If someone's want to do what we did with our investment journey, we are doing it for multiple properties. But in terms of an investor, you look at the demand supply ratio. So for example, as I talked about the vacancy rate in Hobart, it's sitting at 0.65, second lowest in the country. So there is rental crisis. So, and because it's an island, you can only build so many houses. Then
because of the logistical challenges,
exactly.
being an island.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think in last year, something like that, the Liberal government, Jeremy Rockcliffe, they promised 10,000 homes by 2032, and the people started criticizing him, saying, it's not possible. And I was surprised. I said, why is it not possible? And I've done some research. I've spoken to a few people, and I figured out the reason it's not possible. For example, I used to work at Tasrail, right? I used to run their tenders. We had a funding of 140 million as an infrastructure and investment program, so that we can revitalize the the tracks and the other infrastructure. So they hired me so that I can create a competition within the contractors. I can bring more contractors in the fold,
Fighting for the same tender.
exactly. And we can have a better rate. We can do the same job, in a, we can get that done in a cheaper price, or have more competitiveness. So we invited few contractors or businesses from the mainland. They participated in the tender, but they were never competitive. And the reason I say that, they cannot make their margins out of that tender. For example, if they have to do the job, they have to bring their own staff from interstate. They have to make them stay in hotels. They have to fund their food. They have to bring their own machinery because Tassie is an island, right? You do not have a road access. If you have to go to Tassie, you have to get on a ferry. The same logic applies for these 10,000 homes example by Jeremy Rockcliffe. Not the new builder is going to go to the Tassie and going to say, "Hey, we're going to develop this land and we're going to build, 5,000 homes in next 2 years." No, that's not going to happen.
So it's the fight among the same people, same builder and developers
Yeah.
in the same region, because it doesn't justify for people in the mainland or Melbourne or Sydney to go there and be profitable with the same sort of development.
Yeah. They cannot make the margins. So on these on these big projects, it's all about the margins, whether it's 5%, 10%, they just cannot beat the local contractors. And there are only a handful local developers or the construction companies or, builders. So, so that's the logic behind it. So they cannot, yes, the government is doing every bit of it that they need to do to have enough enough homes by 2032, whatever the plan is. But still the demand versus supply and hence the capital growth. So if they keep the net migration of Tasmania is positive. I think it's about 1.5% year on year. So the population is increasing. The supply of houses is not catching up the way it should. Hence the rental crisis, and it's mostly in the capital cities like of Hobart, Launceston, and that drives the capital growth.
Thanks, Gary. It's been a big value. It's more like a bomb sort of value that you have created being here. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much.